following what is theming today in industry. I mean, I woke up this morning to some news about a cyber attack promoting Bitcoin scam on Twitter accounts for some notable persons. It essentially stresses the fact for cybersecurity.
Segun, it is such a pleasure of having you today. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Martin. Thank you very much for having me.
Let's talk a little bit about the Africa FinTech Foundry. The Africa FinTech Foundry was created by Access Bank of Nigeria, which I believe is Nigeria's largest bank in terms of assets. How has your business model changed during the pandemic, and what lessons can the rest of the world learn from the Africa FinTech Foundry?
Thank you very much, Martin. That's an interesting question. So our business model, I mean, I'll speak primarily to what we do in Africa FinTech Foundry, and maybe a bit less around the bank in entirety, because we won't have enough time for that. So within the Foundry, our business model of engaging startups is pretty similar to what we had pre-COVID. We're a bit more deliberate about the type of startup now, because there is a theming wave of new problems, specifically around healthcare and management, around logistics and distribution, so supporting, the new, what the world seems to be calling the new normal, but the big thing is our operation. So the focus remains the same to pre-COVID days. We are a bit more deliberate about the industry segments that we prioritize, but our operations have now gone totally virtual, and that's in a bid to keep our employees safe during the COVID pandemic. Our accelerator programs, our pitch days, our demo days, and all our various other industry events are now being held online. We were scheduled to have a big conference, our Disrupt conference, which last year was the largest technology conference across West Africa. We were scheduled to hold that in May this year. We've had to reschedule that. And again, the main reason for that has been around the COVID lockdown and the fact that we now have to be a lot more deliberate at making sure that it's 100% virtual conference, so that's something to look out for in the near future. Within the AFF, what we do, our goal is primarily to provide value to startups, expand ecosystems, bridging gaps around innovation and problem solving, and connecting all stakeholders in a way that is beneficial to every party. One of the ways we tend to do this is connecting startups to thought leadership networks that we have, investor networks that we have, open opportunities, which are facilitated by the fact that we're powered by the largest bank in Nigeria today, which means we're able to expose some of the services from those startups into offerings and products from the bank, as well as offerings and product solutions to the bank's customers. So we help to restructure the startup business model, rework those through some of our programs, like our accelerator program that we've just completed one, and we should get in ready to launch another one before the end of Q3. But to answer, I think there's a second part of your question, which is what lessons can the rest of the world learn from what is ongoing today. For me, there are a number of lessons. The five that jump at me as we have this conversation. The first one for me would be the fact that partnerships and collaborations are key to scalability. It is a time for tech players, for startups, for ideators to realize that they cannot and should not go it alone. It is important to leverage on communities like the Africa FinTech Foundry, the plethora of similar ecosystems globally, who are geared at building strong ecosystems that can help them to co-create robust and unique, relevant solutions which are addressing theming problems today. again, what I believe is going to happen is we're going to start seeing a lot more, an increasing number of collaborations between the big tech players and the fintechs, traditional corporates and the fintechs, and fintechs collaborate, bring scalability to the products that they offer. The second lesson for me is one that is underpinned by the fact that companies like WhatsApp, Uber, Slack were all founded after the Great Recession of 2008. I think what that depicts is that from the current crisis, a plethora of opportunities. You will find that this current COVID crisis that has morphed into a global economic crisis presents a plethora of opportunities for new companies, ideas, and innovations that will rule the world post-COVID. So there is an opportunity in there. I think there's a key lesson as well, which I would call the third one, and that's the relevance of regulatory support. I think that's very important to keep the technology and startup ecosystem alive and help to develop talents. So as innovation carries on, as startups and technology enthusiasts are looking to solve problems, they must assess the impact of regulation on their business models and ensure that they are flexible enough to do the right, to know when to challenge regulation, when to follow regulation, and when to do the correct level of diversification to ensure that they are not hindered by regulated controls. Lesson number 4 for me would be, again, following what is theming today in industry. I mean, I woke up this morning to some news about a cyber attack promoting Bitcoin scam on Twitter accounts for some notable persons. It essentially stresses the fact for cybersecurity. We're all going digital now. 2 key things are important: focus on cybersecurity, focus on corporate governance. And when I say corporate governance, it is at the process level rather than just at the organization level. I think, solutions are now becoming a lot more robust, that even at simple processes such as customer onboarding, payment authentication, it is important that there are granular efforts to ensure that corporate governance and regulation and security are considered in full depth. And lastly, for me, what I would say as one of the key lessons from what's going on globally today is what seems to be becoming the digital lifestyle. So the fact that financial products are now being unbundled to reverse course. Consumers are increasingly seeking solutions that address complex and fragmented digital lives. They're preferring trusted platforms that will aggregate all their financial affairs. So conversations are very rapidly shifting from advanced technologies like blockchain, like Internet of Things, like big data, and transitioning to address the question of what specific use case and application are you using technology to address? What complex lifestyle problem is this technology that you're brandishing? What problem is it truly solving? So I think that's one area that innovators and tech enthusiasts need to be very deliberate about in how they solve problems and how they use technology accordingly. We're finding the big tech giants, the Alibaba, the Alphabets, the Tencents, the Apples, they're increasingly focusing on the fintech space. They're working to expand their reach. They're forging investments in that space through strategic alliances. And, it's now where others are becoming the norm. And the winners are those looking to increase value and seamlessly integrate their ecosystems to the customers. I think, if I was to encapsulate lessons learned, those would be my lessons from experience to date.
Thank you, Segun. Let me follow up and then maybe come back to something that you actually just mentioned right now. But let me follow up a little bit on your last point. You said obviously the big tech is moving increasingly into FinTech as well. So in your opinion, what do you believe is the test of a resilient FinTech ecosystem?
That's an interesting question, Martin. Of course, there are a number of ways. I'm going to make an attempt to give what I believe is a comprehensive, true test of a resilient FinTech ecosystem. And I think that is one that has the capacity to fail, but is supported by three key things. A continuous innovation, which is underpinned by consistent learning from customer preferences and behavior, as well as changing markets. Secondly, industry stakeholders, which comprises regulators, investors, governments with adaptable incentives to encourage a thriving economy in that space, and of course, business angels and/or accelerators. All of them operating as collaborative stakeholders. And lastly, I would say a very strong governance framework with committed and progressive management focused on solving key problems with sustainable solutions and models. You will observe that these support areas encapsulate the role of partners, the focus on innovation, and the focus on markets and customers with people and leaders as well. And this is based on my learnings from a number of theming experiences within the FinTech space. I'll give a few examples. I spoke earlier about the cybersecurity flaw in Twitter over the last 24 hours. There's Wirecard, which seem to be experiencing a number of issues around corporate governance. There is Zoom, which, the pandemic brought an appreciable acceleration to, which then, meant they had to very quickly respond to cybersecurity and data protection flaws. There's the Monetary Authority of Singapore, who's just pumped in about 125 million Singaporean dollars, which is a support package to help fintechs and financial institutions to grow when the threat of COVID-19 recedes and the economic activity normalizes. And finally, bringing this home to some of what we do, there are a number of partnerships that we have undertaken within the Africa FinTech Foundry with players across a multiplicity of industries, FMCG, oil and gas, consulting, and just looking at how we can bring a collaborative engagement with the startups within our ecosystem and those partners. I think that's what I would call a true test. So focus on the role of partners, innovation, markets, changing markets and customers, and people and leadership.
Second, as I said, I wanted to come back a little bit to the answer that you gave to the previous question and maybe broaden the scope a little bit and move a bit outside of only FinTech. You already said, well, when we look at some of the key players, at the unicorns right now, they have all emerged, have all been started after the last crisis. It is quite clear that we are now heading into not only a health crisis, but also into an economic crisis. So following a little bit your argument, we should see big business emerge or new innovative ideas emerge from this crisis. You're obviously very much embedded in the entrepreneurial culture ecosystem in Africa. So, and we certainly hope that obviously the African continent takes a leadership role in some of the innovative ideas coming out of this pandemic. So, based on your experience, what do you see some of the interesting trends that are emerging right now? Maybe even some of the companies that you said, these are the guys to watch. I don't know. I'm like having you on this call. What is your take on that?
I would be a bit more comfortable talking around industries than company names, if that's okay.
You don't want to show all your cards as well, right?
I'd rather cover them somewhere until they're fully matured and we all go out with a big bang. But I can surely talk about some industries that, you know, we have seen where there seemed to be some potential. So I spoke earlier as well. I think I mentioned two key industries. One was around health. And when I mean health from the pharmaceuticals, from the management. You know, what is now in Africa is there is a reluctance to go into hospitals, and people are a lot more open now into telemedicine options as at least the first level of assessment before they have to go into a hospital. The hospitals themselves are spending a lot more time to ensure that they are disinfected, they are less prone to exposing diseases and infections when people come into that. So I think that's one area to watch. Distribution, transport, and logistics, for me, that's also another area, especially, and I'm speaking primarily to what I see within the African context right now. You know, that's another area I think one should watch, primarily because people are now also a bit more opposed to leaving their homes to go to the market or to go to the stores to buy things. And I think the people that are able to address the problem of delivery, which has been one of the challenges for e-commerce in this part of the world, are very likely to see a boom in this climate. People are going to eat more. What is going on today in Nigeria, for example, is, you know, the airports have been locked for about 3 months. So there's, you know, very little opportunity for people who import different things, food and clothing and all of that. So agriculture, I think, is definitely another space for two reasons. One is we're going to eat more local made, and has evolved to become an opportunity, a solid exports business for us as a continent, helping to bring to bring in some foreign exchange and, of course, put Africa on the map of relevance globally. And then I think food processing is another space to look out to, again, for the same, for the connection to agriculture industry and the same reasons that I've spoken about around food and eating and survival, let me put it that way. Now let's go to my passion area, which is fintech. I think that is also one area to look out for. And the reason I would always put that in is if fintech as a solution that addresses a problem in a unique manner across any industry and is able to provide an opportunity to make transactions seamless. So essentially, if you have an agricultural solution, you have an e-commerce solution, and you are able to introduce a number of financial institutions to make payments more seamless, make loans and savings more seamless, you know, it will create an opportunity. That opportunity today we call the platform economy or the digital economy. But, you know, underpinning all of that would be some ideas that have come from the fintech ecosystem.
Thank you so much, Segun. So let's really hope that from this crisis comes as well opportunity. Let's really hope. I think right now we're all still a little bit in crisis mode, but that doesn't imply that we should be looking pessimistically into the future. I think, as you pointed out, there's going to be great opportunities coming from that. So thank you very much, Segun, for your time, for your insights, not only around fintech, but also around Africa and the global or wider opportunities that's come from this pandemic. Thank you so much, Segun.
Thank you very much, Martin. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I just want to highlight as well that obviously this interview is just the start, I think, of a series of interviews where we're going to give a little bit more focus on what is happening on the African continent through our IE Africa Center. So as well, please feel free to follow out or check out the series Notes on a Continent. That's going to focus or shed some more light on what is happening in Africa. So once again, thank you very much for your time and being the inaugural interview. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Fantastic. Thank you very much. I'm highly honored.